For the avoidance of doubt, we want to make the distinction that rebirth is not the same as reincarnation. Reincarnation is an Eastern terminology that does not reflect rebirth as taught under the Western wisdom teachings. We refer you to lecture number 10, where we talk about the difference between Western Esoteric Christianity and Eastern teachings. The next area of difference between Eastern teaching and Western teaching is about rebirth, what is called in the East as reincarnation. The Western followers agree with their Eastern counterparts that human beings are born or reborn from age to age in different bodies and under various or varying circumstances. It is the spirit that is doing this, not this physical body. It is the journey of the spirit we are talking about. Both East and West agree. The point of difference, however, is about the purpose behind the fact of rebirth. The West calls it rebirth, not reincarnation. The goal of reincarnation in the East is to escape from the wheel of reincarnation by reaching a state of nirvana or enlightenment. This state is attained by withdrawal from the material world and dedication to the elimination of desires and actions. So the Easterner has a rationale that I don't have to commit any wrong. And the way not to commit any wrong is to withdraw from material things, eliminate the wrong desires, and don't take wrong actions. The idea is that by refraining from every new cause, there eventually will be no more future karma to pay off, and therefore no reason to return to physical existence. That is the rationale behind reincarnation in the East. It is for this reason that the Eastern follower adjusts to a passive and disinterested attitude towards life. Very meek, very humble, don't want to commit himself or herself to any new karma. And the way is to withdraw those wrong desires from materiality. The Westerner, in contrast, sees the material life as a school of experience, which must be mastered if he or she is to become a creator like the Heavenly Father. So the Westerner does not withdraw. Christ said this, "He that believeth on me, the works that I do shall he do." John 14, verse 12. So, rather than trying to be liberated from the cycle of rebirth, the Westerner uses his or her stay, her journey in the material world to the greatest spiritual advantage possible. By so doing, he or she builds the soul body, and in time, after having learned all the lessons the material world has to offer, such a Westerner becomes an adept, the one who overcomes death and rises above the law of rebirth. That is the difference. So the Westerner uses the material things, transforms them, and eventually becomes an adept, not to stay away from material things. Regarding such a person, the one who overcomes death, the one who uses the material things, transforms them into spirituality, and eventually becomes an adept. This is what Revelation 3, verse 12 says about him. "Him that overcometh will I make a pillar in the temple of my God, and he shall go no more out. And I will write upon him the name of my God, and the name of the city of my God, which is New Jerusalem, which cometh down out of heaven from my God, and I will write upon him my new name." That is what is written in the Bible for the one who overcomes death. However, even in that exalted state, if the person has overcome death, if the person has so spiritualized the body like a Westerner will do, such a person does not shirk responsibility to younger sisters and brothers. But at any point in time when it becomes necessary, such a highly developed person dons the physical body to serve humanity. And Christ showed us a typical example of how a highly developed person can assume a lower position in order to serve others for collective spiritual progress. Even the Christ took upon himself the form of a servant and was made in the likeness of man. We can read that from Philippians chapter 2, verse 7. Service in our present environment is the shortest, the safest, and the most joyful road to God. Roughly, and this is key, roughly every 2,100 years, when the sun is passing through any of the 12 signs of the zodiac, the spirit takes alternatively a male and a female body in order to experience life in both poles. One as a male, the other as a female. On the average, every 1,000 years, the spirit comes back to rebirth. Spirits take up physical bodies only to gain experience, to conquer the world, to overcome the lower self, the lower desires, and attain self-mastery. This is rebirth, according to the Western wisdom teachings, and differs from reincarnation concept as taught by Eastern philosophies. Take note that spirits in human bodies belong to the human life wave and cannot transmigrate to animal life wave nor plant life wave, which are lower. Each life wave is distinct and meant for beings who came into manifestation in a particular period. This explanation varies largely from Eastern wisdom teachings. For millions of years, spirits return to rebirth, enter into material bodies to gather experience in the physical world in the journey towards perfection. In the process, the spirit has its strengths and also has its weaknesses. It has made friends and it has also made enemies. It has carried out good deeds and also bad deeds. The bad deeds, the bad things that the spirit has done, incur death of nature, which ought to be liquidated to restore equilibrium to the spirit itself and also nature. The good deeds add to its quality towards perfection. Before coming into the physical world, the spirit takes a decision in the spiritual worlds about which of the debts it wants to liquidate. There are super beings in the spiritual worlds who are in charge of debt liquidation. They are called recording angels. And they are in charge of the seed atoms, the records that are contained in the seed atoms. Those who oversee it are the recording angels. All those records, they help in placing the spirit in the appropriate environment towards the realization of the choices that it made before rebirth. Let's talk a bit about epigenesis. The spirit builds on previous achievements and also explores new areas that it has hitherto not ventured. In addition to paying off past debts, it means rebirth is not just about paying back past debts. It's more than that. So, in addition to paying off past debts and setting in motion new courses, the spirit has within itself the faculty of epigenesis, the ability to inaugurate something exceptionally new, the ability to inaugurate something exceptionally new towards the betterment of humanity. It could be a skill, a profession, talent, or whatever endeavor. The person is a genius in capacities that it has previous proficiency. In music, in engineering, in science, in oratory, in philosophy, or whatever profession or skills area. The spirit excels without much toil in those areas because it had a previous experience. But it finds some challenges in new areas that it begins to explore. The spirit comes back to associate with old friends and foes and makes new friends to liquidate past debts and set in motion new courses. All that we are, all that we have is a result of our previous work in life. What we yet are not, or we do not have, is attainable by what we do now. It is not a loving and just God who is denying one person and giving to the other. But each person merits whatever comes to him or her because of past actions and inactions. If we know these truths about life, we will not spend a second blaming others or being jealous of others, but work hard to improve ourselves and environment for a better future. Go to the theory of rebirth. This theory teaches that each spirit is an integral part of God, that it enfolds all divine possibilities, that by means of many lives in an earthly body, of gradually improving texture, its latent powers are being slowly unfolded to become available as dynamic energy, that none can be lost, but that all will ultimately attain to perfection and reunion with God, each bringing with it the accumulated experiences which are the fruitage of its pilgrimage through matter. This earth may be likened to a school to which we return life after life to learn new lessons, as our children go to school day after day to increase their knowledge. The child sleeps through the night, which intervenes between 2 days at school, and the spirit also has its rest from active life between death and a new birth. That is how the spirit also has its rest. If we apply ourselves to learn the lessons of life, we shall advance much faster in the school of life than if we dilly-dally and idle our time away. We are not here by the caprice of God. He has not given one a healthy body so that he may live at ease from pain and sickness, while he placed another in poor circumstances with never-ending rest but all pain. God never did that. But what we are is based on our own diligence or negligence. And what we shall be in the future depends upon what we want or we will to be, and not upon divine caprice or upon inflexible fate. It's not so. It's our own making. No matter what the circumstances, it lies with us to master the circumstances. We need to master them or be mastered by the circumstances. For this reason, there are those who are ahead because of the good use that they had made of their opportunities in past lives. We have all been here in physical embodiment before. This is not the first time. The Jews knew about the doctrine of rebirth, or they wouldn't have asked John the Baptist if he were Elijah, as recorded in John chapter 1, verse 21. The apostles of Christ also held the belief of rebirth, as recorded in Matthew chapter 16, where the Christ asked them the question, "Whom do men say that I, the Son of Man, am?" The apostles replied, "Some say that thou art John the Baptist, some Elias, and others Jeremiah, or one of the prophets." The Christ tacitly assented to the teaching of rebirth because he did not correct the disciples as he would have done in his capacity as a teacher. Were the disciples mistaken? But to Nicodemus, he said unequivocally, "Except a man be born again, he cannot see the kingdom of God." And in Matthew chapter 11, verse 14, he said, speaking of John the Baptist, "This is Elijah." In Matthew chapter 17, verse 12, he said, "Elijah is come already, and they knew him not, but have done unto him whatsoever they listed." Then the disciples understood that he spoke to them of John the Baptist. If DNA explains all that we are, then siblings should not differ from their parents and among themselves in form, in character, intelligence, and attitudes. If we want to leave the problem of life, the issue of death, to only material things, and we are using DNA as a factor, then everybody should be the same. The form side of things can be established as science is doing. science can establish the form side of things. But when it comes to the higher qualities of conscience, values, character, intelligence, emotions, and attitudes, each person is distinct as a result of the journey of the spirit through matter. Only the law of rebirth, together with its twin law, the law of cause and effect, explain the differences and the uniqueness of each person. And we refer you to lecture number 11, the law of cause and effect as a factor in your life. The presentation gives detailed explanation of this law. So please, you may go back to lecture number 11. The theory of rebirth teaches that each one of us, as spirit, is an integral part of God, containing all divine possibilities, as the seed enfolds the plant. That by means of repeated existences in an earthly body of gradually improving quality, the latent possibilities are slowly developed into dynamic powers, that none are lost by this process, but that humanity will ultimately attain the goal of perfection and reunion with God. When we die, after one life, we return to earth later, under circumstances determined by the manner in which we lived before. This theory of rebirth does not rest upon speculation. It is one of the first facts of life demonstrated to the follower of a Christian mystery or spiritual Christianity school. He or she is taught to watch a dying child and also to watch it in the invisible world from day to day until it comes back to a new birth a year or two later. Then the individual knows with absolute certainty that we return to earth to reap in a future life what we now sow. So what we sow now, what we do now, is the basis for our next life on earth. We sow our own life. The preference for watching a child to an adult is that the child is reborn very quickly, for its short life on earth has borne but few fruits, and these are soon assimilated, while the adult who has lived a long life and had much experience remains in the invisible worlds for centuries, so that the follower of a spiritual Christianity school could not watch him from death to rebirth. What we are saying is that the law of rebirth is a fact. It is not based upon speculation. If you seek spiritual development through the Christian way, one of the things you will be taught is to follow a child when he dies or she dies. Not only by the time the person dies, but even after the person has gone into the invisible world. You follow that spirit, that child in the invisible world until it is reborn again within 1 or 2 years, because children are born earlier than adults who had lived for a longer period. The average interval between two earth lives is about 1,000 years. The spirit takes physical embodiment, which we call birth, twice in 2,100 years, when the sun is going through one of the 12 zodiacal signs. It is giving birth, of course, is the physical body we are talking about. It takes physical embodiment once as a man and another time as a woman, so that the spirit can gain experience in both poles, the male side and the female side. The male side is to develop the will, that determination, that strong determination to get something done. And the female aspect is to develop the faculty of imagination, how to imagine. Such is the rule. But it is subject to whatever modifications may be necessary. So it is not a rigid law that 2,100 years the spirit must come twice, once as a male, once as a female. There is some level of flexibility. It may become necessary to facilitate reaping of a previous seed sown in life. And in such a manner, it is required under the law of causation that the spirit comes back to rebirth earlier or later. So at times, a spirit may be brought to birth long before the 1,000 years have expired in order to fulfill a certain mission, or it may be detained in the invisible worlds after the time when it should have come to birth. There are great intelligences who always subordinate minor considerations to higher ends, and under their beneficent guidance, we are constantly progressing from life to life under conditions exactly suited to each individual, until in time we shall attain to a higher evolution to become Superman.
Filling up every space, no privacy. And silently, it could build and build until you finally see. Whoa, it's taking over, damn no closure, moving closer. No exposure, I just wanna be a loner. Some can't stay sober, looking over all this.